our pity parties. Why me? Why did this have to happen to me? I play by the rules. I do everything right. Why me? Why not somebody else? Why not somebody who takes away from society instead of somebody who tries to give something back? Why not somebody who deserves it because of the evil they do? Why me? When we get to thinking about problems, why me is oftentimes one of the first questions that come to mind. People talk all the time about the perfect world. Perfect world would be a world free of problems, a world free of any kind of tears, any kind of pain, any suffering. That would be the perfect world. It would be a better world. It would be much more fun, and we would live much happier lives. Listen to preachers, and preachers talk that way. I heard a preacher one time. He was talking about God doesn't want you to be in pain or suffering, and He doesn't want you to shed tears. He doesn't want poverty, and yada, yada, yada. He went on and on and on. And one time I met him at the funeral home up in town, and I asked him if the Lord didn't want all that, how come we got it? Why is it here? I don't understand. One thing's for sure, we don't have a world that's free of problems or a world that's free of tears. You can ask our sister A.V. I don't know of many people who's had more things go wrong in her latter years than Sister A.V. Every time we turn her around, something else is going wrong in her life. And she has suffered for the last how many years? I don't even remember. There's always something. And right now, another broken hip. It's not a world free of problems. Most would probably say it's an imperfect world. That's the kind of world that we live in. It's an imperfect world. Atheist, as a matter of fact, he uses this very thing, suffering, as evidence that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. God is love. That's what the preacher says. God is all-powerful. Well, if God is love, if God is all-powerful, why do people cry? A God of love wouldn't want people to cry. And a God who had all power wouldn't allow them to cry. And yet people cry. And the atheist says, obviously, there is no such person as a being who is all love and all power. Because human suffering exists, and that negates the concept of the God of the Bible. That's the logic that's used. It sounds good. It sounds good unless you investigate the matter and find out exactly what the truth is. Is the Lord to be blamed for humanity's sufferings? Isaiah said He created the heavens. He formed the earth to be inhabited. God created the environment that you and I live in. And this environment is killing us. Slow but sure, it's killing us, and we will die. And more than likely, before we die, we're going to cry. And in the case of most people, we're probably going to cry a whole lot. There's all kinds of suffering, all kinds. The fear a man has, he's going to lose his job. If he loses his job, he's going to lose the house he's been paying on for the past 15 years. If he loses his house, he's got nowhere for his family to live. And he suffers with that knowledge of the possibility of not having a place for his family to live. Or you find out that you got a child who has a terminal illness. And the physicians say, well, there's only a 40% chance. And a mother and a father, they don't know what to do. They start losing their minds because the pain is so intense. It's so severe. And they turn to God and they need answers. And God doesn't speak to us in words. And we need words. We need somebody to tell us something to make sense out of all this stuff. This is God's doing. He made us. He made the world in which we live. They say it's not a perfect world, which means He goofed in the construction of it. Is that true? A lot of people think so. A lot of people. I think David had a problem with this. David was a man who sorrowed a great deal. He experienced a lot of difficulties in his life. In the 39th Psalm, he talks about one time when he had problems, and here's what he had to say. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears. David has been sorrowing, bringing him to tears, and yet there's been no resolution to the problem. He's asking God not to hold his peace any longer. He wants him to do something. He's not doing anything, and he wants him to do something. I'm just a sojourner with you, Lord. I'm just a visitor on this planet. I'm a guest, just like my daddy was and my grandfather. And if you don't help me, there is no help. Look away from me at least. Look the other way, that I might be able to smile again. Apparently he thought the Lord's gaze was the reason for his suffering. And if God would just look away for a while, he would be able to smile again before he dies and leaves this world. Job suffered more than anybody. Job is a man that all of us have grown to respect very much because he went through so much. He had to have been delirious most of the time during his suffering because when he spoke so much out of character. It wasn't Job. Job was maybe losing his mind because of the pain and the suffering he had to endure. And his suffering came from so many directions. It appears that maybe he had leprosy and a severe case of it at that. In addition to that, his wife wasn't supporting him anymore. She told him to curse God and die. You know, you're good for nothing. Curse God and die. His friends, they were miserable comforters in his word. And where was his God? The God he had served all of his life. Where was he? I mean, that was the worst thing of all. Even God wasn't helping him. And his misery was absolutely out of this world. And I think that's why Job had some of the harsh things to say that he had to say, because his pain was so great. God delivered me to the ungodly. It's God's doing. It's He who turned me over to the hands of wicked men. I was at ease, life was good, but He shattered me. He tore my life apart. He also has taken me by my neck and shaken me to pieces. He has set me up for His target to shoot arrows at. I had a good life. I was at ease. Life was good. He was very wealthy. He had 10 kids. I mean, everything was good. Pillar of the community, helped everybody that needed help, and all of a sudden, almost in a heartbeat, his whole world turned upside down. God's archers surround me. He pierces my heart. He does not pity me. He pours out my gall on the ground. He breaks me with wound upon wound. He runs at me like a warrior. Job thought God was to blame because of all the suffering he experienced. And why not? God is love. He said He loves me. Surely He doesn't want me to hurt like this. Can you imagine a father allowing his child to suffer such a way? That doesn't sound right. He's all-powerful. He could make it go away if He just would. And I haven't done anything wrong, at least nothing that deserves this kind of punishment. There was nothing about this situation that was right. And Job was doubting the goodness of God. He didn't know what to think. And that's what suffering does to people. It turns you upside down, inside out. Whatever faith you had gets thrown to the floor. Somebody steps on it and somebody else comes along and kicks it. And there's nothing you can do about it. You fight and you fight and you fight and you try to stay afloat. It's hard. There was a Levite singer who was with David the king on one occasion when David was on the run from King Saul. He was in exile at this time. It's recorded in the 42nd Psalm. And here's what he has to say about the matter. My tears have been my food day and night. Can you imagine how many tears he's talking about? I mean, this man is crying a lot. His tears are his food in the daytime and the nighttime. He's ingesting so many tears. It's sustaining him physically. While they, that is the tears continually say to me, where is your God? And isn't that the question that comes to mind? When life falls apart, where is God? Why doesn't he help me? Why doesn't he do something? He's huge. He's all powerful. He could speak and it's gone. Why won't he help? I can understand why anybody asks that question. I've asked it enough myself. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? What have I done? How have I offended you? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of my enemy? Without your care or concern. As with a deadly wound in my bone, my adversaries, they taunt me all the time, while they say to me all the day long, where is your God? Much like the atheists today, where is the God of the Bible? That's what his adversaries were saying to him in his suffering. Why are you cast down, O my soul? He's talking to himself. Why are you in turmoil within me? You ever talk to yourself? If you suffer, you will. You talk to yourself a whole lot. And that's what he's doing. He's feeling one thing emotionally. Intellectually, he knows he shouldn't do that. And he goes on to say, hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation and my God. Sometimes that's what we do. We bite our tongue. We bite our tongue and we wait. And we endure the suffering and we wait. Our faith is challenged and we wait. Sometimes we think about giving up, but we wait. Surely things will get better. So we wait. Why do bad things happen to good people? You know, we'll talk about Jesus. Is the Lord to be blamed for his suffering? 2 words. He gave his only Son. That's God. He gave his Son. He did not spare his own Son. He gave his Son to the indignities he had to endure. Was that God's doing? Obviously it was. He said so. He gave him to that very end. Jesus said, I thirst. He was just like me and you. He may have had pimples on his face when he was a teenager. No doubt he fell down several times and skinned his knees and cried as he run to his mama Mary. There were times when he was tempted to do something. He knew he shouldn't do it. Not supposed to do it. But boy, he wanted to do it. But he couldn't do it. And he wouldn't do it. I thirst. 2 little words. And they speak volumes about the Son of God. He was tempted in all points, just like you and I are. Only he didn't give up like we do. Jesus wept, John 11:35. I'm not sure why. He might have been weeping because his good friends were weeping over the death of their brother and Jesus' very good friend, Lazarus. That may have been why he wept. He seen the sisters weeping and he couldn't hold back his tears. He may have been weeping for Lazarus. I don't know. Lazarus was dead. He was in paradise. Paradise. And Jesus knew he was going to bring him out of paradise back into this world. And according to history, not long after Jesus was murdered on the cross, the Jewish leaders hunted down Lazarus, and they murdered him also. Jesus might have wept because he knew what Lazarus would have to go through again. I don't know why he wept, but I know he wept. I know he felt for the pain of other people. He was going to Jerusalem. It was during the Passion Week, and as you come around this bend, coming down Mount Olivet, you come around to a certain point, and all of a sudden the whole city of Jerusalem opens up to you. It's a really beautiful sight. I was there 2 times. As you come down that mount, the city opens up to you. Jesus looked, he saw the city, and the Bible says he wept over it. In the Greek language, what it means is he broke down and bawled over the city. It absolutely broke his heart. He had watched this city for 1,500 years. He had nurtured her. He cared for her. He rubbed her wounds. He did everything in his power to keep her afloat. And now, here at last, he knew what was coming. And it wasn't what they were going to do to him. It's what he was going to have to do to them. Because he knew that in 40 short years, he was going to come back leading the Roman legions. And when he did, the city was going to be destroyed in a way the mind cannot imagine. And he wept. They had the opportunity. They rubbed elbows with the Son of God. And they said, no thanks. And he wept. My God, why have you forsaken me? He sounds like us. Why me? The pain, the anguish, the heartache, the suffering. Why? Sometimes it doesn't make sense. The Hebrews author says, in the day of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplication with vehement cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his godly fears. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience. How? By the things which he suffered. There's the why part. That's the why part. That's why suffering is necessary. That's how we learn. That's how we learn obedience. It's through the things that we suffer. We learn what it's like to look at a person who's hurting because we've been there and we've hurt. We know what it's like to see a wife who's lost a husband and she looks like she can't get her breath because we've lost people we're very close to. We learn empathy and we learn compassion. We learn tenderness. And we learn to reach out a helping hand because we've suffered and we understand that flesh and blood needs flesh and blood. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. Our Lord said, woe unto the world because of occasions of stumbling. And then he finished it out. For it must needs be that the occasions come. Let me modify it just a little bit. For it is necessary that occasions of stumbling come. He'll go on to say, but woe unto that man through whom those occasions come. It would have been better for him had a millstone been tied around his neck and cast into the depth of the sea rather than having to face me in the day of judgment. But notice what he said. These occasions of stumbling are necessary. It has to do with our being here. That's why we're here. Is to learn and to become like God. And one of the most valuable instruments, tools at our disposal is suffering. As weird as that seems, suffering can change your whole life. At 43 years old, I lost my job and I became a preacher. Before I knew it, I was traveling to another country and preaching the gospel. And then I started writing books to train preachers. Started a school of preaching, teach preachers on a regular basis, trying to help them preach the gospel on the other side of the earth. When I lost my job, I thought my world came to an end. I had no idea it was just beginning. I thought everything was gone, was over. It had fallen, and the truth of the matter was, God picked me up. And He made me useful. And He gave me a purpose. And He allowed me to live the greatest life I could possibly have ever lived. I grunt every day. I grunt. I grunt like a horse sometimes. But that's okay. That's okay because the prophet is out of this world. Suffering. We do not lose heart. That's what Paul said. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. The outward, look at your hands and you can see the age on your hands. Them used to be my daddy's hands. Now they're my hands. Sometimes when I'm walking, I remember how my daddy walked, and now when I walk, I feel like daddy looked. Do you ever do that? Ever see your mom or daddy in you? You feel like they looked when they hobbled or whatever it was they did. The outer person goes down, but the inner person, the soul, it soars. It soars with the eagles. Because the Lord takes us into a realm we could never have gotten to on our own. And sometimes it's through a pain in the back. Our light affliction, Paul suffered as much as anybody suffered. He had all kinds of suffering in his life because he was a Christian. And he refers to it as a light affliction. No big deal. He compared it to what was to come. It was a big deal. But in comparison to his reward, no big deal. It was a light affliction. The best was yet to come. And he knew it. Our light affliction is just for a moment. And it's working for us right now. A far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Your suffering is working for you. It is helping you. It is helping you to learn patience. And patience is so important. We do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. Because the things that are seen, those are transient things. The things that are not seen, those are the eternal things. So we look at the eternal things. And because the best is yet to come, we bite our tongue and we hold on. James said it this way. We began there, we'll end there. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. I remember the first time I ever read that statement. I thought that's the goofiest thing I ever read. How could anybody count it all joy? It didn't make sense to me. I thought anybody that did, they were lying about it. Because how can you have problems in your life and count it joy? You can't be honest if you say you do. Well, James did. Count it all joy when you fall into, these are accidental, it's not something you look for, it's something that happens to you. Count it all joy when you fall into these various kinds of trials, pitfalls, and problems, knowing that the testing of your faith is how you produce patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking nothing. That's how we develop spiritually. Suffering. Nobody enjoys it. None of us enjoy it. But it's not the time to stop. It's not the time to give up. That's when we excel. That's when you put the pedal to the metal. That's when the Lord's getting ready to lift you up. But so many, many people, they give up. I've seen a lot in my life. I hope nobody here has or nobody here ever will. If you're not a Christian, God speaks to you in a lot of ways. He speaks to you through the environment. The sun, the moon, the stars. How did they get there? How come they're so faithful to maintain their routine? He speaks to you through a young child. I remember a man one time who was converted, or he began to believe in God because he looked at his little baby daughter's ear. And as he sat there and looked at her ear, he realized that that was a design. It wasn't no accident. Somebody made that ear. God speaks to you in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways he speaks to you is by demonstrating that this world isn't a place where you really want to stay. It's not a place where you want to lay up your eggs for the future. Because no matter how many eggs you may lay up, one day you will leave them, and somebody else will play with your eggs. As Christians, the Lord works with us. He helps us work out our our salvation with fear and trembling. He doesn't leave us on our own, but He helps us. In some of the strangest ways ever, He helps us. All the people I showed you in the Bible that thought God had abandoned them, before it was over, they all understood that God hadn't abandoned them at all. He just lifted them up where they could see a little better. And they all grew a little taller spiritually, and so can we. If you're not a Christian, you are to believe that Jesus Christ is God in the flesh who died because you sinned. And it's by and through His blood that you can be redeemed. You can be purchased. You can have fellowship with your Creator once again. As Christians, sometimes the problems in life take their toll on us. They get us down, they beat us, they kick us, they bite us, they just work us over good. And we don't know how long we can put up with it. Don't turn away from God, turn to God. Ask God for help. And when it is time, when you've gotten all the taste out of the meat, then God will lift you up. If we can help you, if you need to come to God, would you come while we stand and while we sing?